The house feels empty not because no one lives here, but because no one visits. The air is still except for the soft ticking of the clock, a sound Martin never used to notice. Now it fills the silence. He sits in his chair, gripping his phone, staring at the screen like a man waiting for a miracle. 3 weeks ago, he sent his son a message. A simple one. "How have you been, son?" Nothing demanding, nothing complicated. Just a father reaching out, hoping for a connection. But the screen remains cold. No reply, no missed calls. Just silence. Have you ever felt that? The slow, painful realization that you are no longer a part of the life you once built? That somewhere along the way, without meaning to, you became invisible? Martin tells himself they're busy. Work, family, life, it all moves fast. But why does it feel like it's moving without him? His eyes drift to the dining table. 3 chairs. 3 plates. He still sets the table the way he used to when his son and daughter came over. But the chairs stay empty. The food grows cold. The conversation never begins. Tonight, unable to shake the heaviness in his chest, he picks up his phone again. Maybe just to check. His fingers hesitate before tapping Facebook. And there it is. A new post. His son, his daughter, their families. Laughing. A vacation. A dinner table full of people. Together, without him. His heart sinks, but he tells himself he's happy for them. He really is. And yet, deep inside, something aches. Not a single text. Not even a small, "Wish you were here, Dad." He used to be in those photos. He used to be the one capturing them. He used to be the reason they all gathered. But now he is just missing. And that's the thing about love. It doesn't disappear overnight. It fades. Slowly. Quietly. Until one day you wake up and realize you have been forgotten. If the story feels familiar, you are not alone. So many of us know this pain. But here's the truth. It's not too late. That's why Elderly Wisdom Story exists. To remind you that your story still matters. If this touched your heart, subscribe. Not just for me, but for yourself. Let's walk this journey together, because no one should ever feel invisible. And neither should you. The house feels empty not because no one lives here, but because no one visits. The air is still except for the soft ticking of the clock, a sound Martin never used to notice. Now it fills the silence. He sits in his chair, gripping his phone, staring at the screen like a man waiting for a miracle. 3 weeks ago, he sent his son a message. A simple one. "How have you been, son?" Nothing demanding, nothing complicated. Just a father reaching out, hoping for a connection. But the screen remains cold. No reply. No missed calls. Just silence. Have you ever felt that? The slow, painful realization that you are no longer a part of the life you once built? That somewhere along the way, without meaning to, you became invisible? Martin tells himself they're busy. Work, family, life, it all moves fast. But why does it feel like it's moving without him? His eyes drift to the dining table. 3 chairs. 3 plates. He still sets the table the way he used to when his son and daughter came over. But the chairs stay empty. The food grows cold. The conversation never begins. Tonight, unable to shake the heaviness in his chest, he picks up his phone again, maybe just to check. His fingers hesitate before tapping Facebook. And there it is. A new post. His son, his daughter, their families. Laughing. A vacation. A dinner table full of people. Together. The holidays had always been a time of warmth, a time when the house overflowed with laughter, the clinking of dishes, and the soft hum of conversation. Martin could still hear it if he closed his eyes. The way his son's voice used to echo from the kitchen, teasing his sister as she set the table. How they used to fight over the last dinner roll until he pretended not to see and let them settle it themselves. He remembers the weight of his grandson on his lap, small hands tugging at his shirt, whispering secrets only a child could find important. Those moments had felt permanent, like they would always return, year after year, as steady as the seasons. But time is cruel in the way it fades things so slowly you don't notice they're slipping away. Martin stands at the table, setting 3 plates, just as he always has. The habit is muscle memory, an instinct he hasn't been able to shake. He picks up his phone, dials his daughter first. The line rings, and for a moment, hope stirs. Then the call cuts to voicemail. Seconds later, a text arrives. "Sorry, Dad. Things are crazy this year. We'll make plans soon." He nods, pressing his lips together, as if she can see him through the screen. He tells himself it's fine, that these things happen. Life moves fast. He tries his son next. The same. A quick text follows. Wish we could, Dad. Let's do something next time. Next time. He lowers himself into the chair, staring at the untouched meal before him. The turkey is still steaming, the cranberry sauce glistening under the dim glow of the chandelier. It's all exactly the way it should be, except there is no one to share it with. He takes a slow bite, chews, swallows. The food is warm, but it feels like nothing, like eating for the sake of survival rather than enjoyment. The chair across from him remains empty. He stares at it for a long time, trying to remember when it had become normal to eat alone. The weeks pass, the holiday season fading into memory. He tells himself things will return to normal after the new year, but the calls don't come. His phone remains still. One evening, as he watches the news, he picks it up and dials his son's number. It rings once, twice, 5 times. Then, voicemail. He hesitates, thumb hovering over the screen, before hanging up. Maybe he shouldn't have called. Maybe they'll think he's being too needy. Instead, he types a message. I miss you, son. Call me when you can. The words sit there, sent but unanswered. He places the phone beside him, watching, waiting, hoping. But nothing changes. Eventually, exhaustion creeps in and he falls asleep in his chair, the phone dark beside him, as silent as the rest of the house. Morning comes and the first thing he does is check his phone. Still nothing. He scrolls through his call log, counting the days, the weeks. The last time his son had called was over a month ago. His daughter even longer. He tells himself not to take it personally, that they have responsibilities, families, lives of their own. But if that's true, why do they still have time for vacations, for friends, for dinner parties filled with laughter? And why, in all those moments, has no one thought to call him? There was a time when his phone rang daily, when his children called just to ask for advice, to share a small story from their day, to say, I love you. Now, the silence between those calls stretches longer and longer, like an unfinished sentence, like a story without an ending. The worst part isn't the silence itself. It's how easy it is to get used to. And that's the thing about losing someone, it doesn't always happen in a single heartbreaking moment. Sometimes it happens in the smallest ways. A call that never comes. A message left on read. A promise of next time that never really means anything at all. At first, you make excuses. Then you start to wonder. And finally, one day, you wake up and realize you have already been left behind. The night is heavy, pressing against the windows like an uninvited guest. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint creak of the wooden floors, the steady ticking of the clock. These are the only companions Martin has left. He sits in his chair, staring at the television, though he isn't watching. The voices blur together, a meaningless buzz, just something to fill the silence. The remote rests beside him, untouched. The room is dim, bathed in the soft glow of a single lamp, casting long shadows that stretch across the walls. Then, without warning, a sharp pain lances through his chest. His breath catches. His fingers dig into the armrests. He waits, willing it to pass. But it doesn't. His heart pounds, each beat louder than the last. He reaches for his phone, his hands trembling, the screen illuminating his face with a cold, artificial glow. His son's name is at the top of the call list. All he has to do is press it. But he hesitates. What time is it? Almost 10. They're probably asleep. Or maybe they're still out having dinner, laughing over wine and candlelight. He imagines his son's phone buzzing on the table, his daughter-in-law glancing at the screen, a quiet sigh passing between them. That again. He can almost hear the words unspoken but understood. He exhales slowly, sets the phone down and closes his eyes. The pain is still there, sharp and unrelenting, but another feeling rises to the surface, something heavier. A realization. If something happened to him tonight, if he closed his eyes and didn't wake up, how long would it take for them to notice? A day? 2? A week? The thought settles in his chest, suffocating in a way the pain never could. He grips the arm of the chair, forcing himself to sit up straighter, to breathe slower, deeper. Eventually, the pain fades, leaving behind only exhaustion. But sleep doesn't come. He lies in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the clock count the seconds, each one stretching into eternity. He wonders if this is what the rest of his life will be. Not the sharp, sudden pain of being forgotten, but the slow, quiet decay of it. Morning comes, pale sunlight creeping through the blinds. He moves carefully, testing his body like a man learning to walk again. The pain is gone, but the weight in his chest remains. He makes his way to the kitchen, fills the kettle, and waits for the water to boil. Steam rises, swirling in the air, disappearing before it can reach the ceiling. He thinks of time, how it moves forward without permission, how it takes things with it. His phone rests on the counter. He picks it up, unlocks the screen, and checks for messages. Nothing. He scrolls, looking for missed calls. Nothing. He exhales, long and slow, then places the phone back down. He doesn't call his son that day. He doesn't text his daughter. He tells himself it's because he doesn't want to be a burden. But the truth is, he's afraid. Afraid that if he calls, they won't answer. Afraid that if he texts, they won't respond. Afraid that no matter how many times he reaches out, they will never reach back. There was a time when he never questioned his place in their lives. A time when they needed him. A time when he was the first person they called for advice, for comfort, for love. But things are different now. The world moves fast and he is standing still watching as it rushes past him. And that's the thing about loneliness, it doesn't always come as an emptiness. Sometimes it comes as a realization. A quiet, aching truth that settles into your bones and whispers, you are alone. That night, as he lies in bed once more, he wonders if it's his fault. Maybe he should have tried harder. Maybe he should have said something when the distance first began. Maybe he should have fought to hold on instead of letting go so easily. But would it have made a difference? Or was this always the way things were meant to be? The clock ticks. The house is still. The phone remains silent, and Martin wonders, for the first time, if anyone would notice if he were gone. Morning light filters through the blinds, stretching across the wooden floor in thin golden lines. Martin sits at the kitchen table, his fingers wrapped around a cup of coffee that has long since gone cold. He isn't drinking it. He isn't even looking at it. His gaze is fixed on the screen of his phone, his thumb slowly scrolling through the familiar blue and white of his Facebook feed. Then he sees it, post from his daughter. A simple caption beneath a picture of his son and grandson. So glad my brother is feeling better. Last week was tough, but we got through it. The words sit heavy on his chest. Heavier than the silence, heavier than the empty chairs at his table. His son was sick. His son was sick, and he had no idea. His hands tremble as he sets the phone down, his heartbeat loud in his ears. How had he not known? How had no one told him? But the truth, as painful as it is, settles quickly. He never asked. For so long, he had been drowning in his own loneliness, measuring love by missed calls and unanswered messages, waiting for them to remember him, to reach out, to make him feel needed again. But had he ever stopped to ask about their lives? Had he ever picked up the phone just to check in, without waiting for them to call first? He had spent so much time mourning the past that he never realized he was the one letting the present slip away. He closes his eyes, exhales deeply, then opens them with a quiet resolve. If he wanted things to change, he couldn't keep waiting. He had to be the one to take the first step. His fingers hover over the keyboard before he types, deliberate and careful. I miss you. I have a story to tell you. When you're free, let's talk. He reads it twice before pressing send. A small knot forming in his stomach. Would she answer? Would she even see it? But for the first time in a long time, he isn't just waiting, he is trying. Then another thought. His grandson. He had barely seen him grow. The boy who once sat on his lap, who once clung to his hand, was now a stranger he only knew through pictures. That had to change. He spends the next hour fumbling through tutorials, watching shaky YouTube videos on how to set up FaceTime. His fingers are clumsy, his patience thinner than it used to be, but eventually he figures it out. And before he can overthink it, before he can let doubt talk him out of it, he presses the call button. The phone rings once, twice, and then laughter. Bright, high-pitched, familiar. His grandson's face appears on the screen, grinning wide, eyes sparkling with the same mischief Martin remembers from years ago. Grandpa, and just like that, something shifts. The silence that had weighed him down for so long is broken, replaced by something lighter, something warmer. Connection. A second chance. Sometimes the smallest step is all it takes to bridge the gap. The knock comes again. Louder this time. Martin's fingers hover over the doorknob, but he doesn't move. Maybe he imagined it. Maybe hope is playing tricks on him again. His heart pounds, the same way it did all those times he waited for a call that never came, for a text that never lit up his screen. But then there it is again. A voice. Dad? It's soft, hesitant, almost uncertain, but real. He grips the doorknob, his breath unsteady. For a brief moment, fear creeps in. What if they're only here out of guilt? What if this is just another visit to ease their conscience before disappearing again? But then another voice. Grandpa, and suddenly none of that matters. The door swings open, and for the first time in what feels like forever, they are standing there. His daughter, his son, his grandson, filling the empty space in his doorway. His daughter holds a pie, shifting her weight nervously. His son clears his throat, hands stuffed into his pockets, searching for words. And then, before anyone can speak, his grandson runs forward, small arms wrapping tightly around Martin's waist. We came for dinner. Martin blinks hard, his throat tight. He looks at them, really looks at them, and sees something he thought he had lost forever. They are here, maybe not in the way they used to be, maybe not as often as before, but they are here, and for now that is enough. They step inside, and the house is no longer silent. The chairs are filled. The table is warm. The air hums with conversation, laughter slipping in between bites of food. Martin doesn't speak much. He just listens, soaking in every second, every word, every sound. He had spent so long fearing he had lost them that he never stopped to consider that maybe, just maybe, he still had a chance to bring them back. Because love isn't about waiting. It isn't about keeping count of who called first or who forgot last. Love is about showing up, about reaching out even when it feels like no one is reaching back, about taking that first step even when you're afraid it might lead to nowhere. And if there's one thing Martin has learned, it's this. The only thing more painful than being forgotten is realizing too late that you could have done something about it. So if you're still holding on to words you haven't said, if you're still waiting for a call that may never come, don't wait. Pick up the phone. Send the message. Let them know you're still here, because time doesn't take love away. Silence does. At Elderly Wisdom Story, we believe that stories have the power to heal, to reconnect, to remind us of what truly matters. If this story touched your heart, don't just keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you believe in the power of wisdom, life lessons, and stories that bring people together, subscribe to our channel, because life moves fast. But love only fades when we let it.